Hi everyone, this is Victoria Fashen and welcome back to my channel. So in this video, I'm actually going to be interviewing Ant, Jarrod, and Andi. They are in Montravision Productions. So can everyone introduce themselves?
Okay, hi, I'm Ant. I'm the producer behind Mantravision Productions. And I play in the band Sounds Like Winter and Sequential Zero and loosely with Sealungs and with Orcus Nullify.
He's a busy boy. Yeah, my name's Andi. I do guitar and a wee bit of vocals in Sounds Like Winter, and vocals and lyrics for Sealungs with the lovely Jarrod. Just happy to be here.
That's a wonderful background you've got there too.
Yeah.
This is the one I used for work. You know, like as you know, I worked down at the unicorn factory.
Is that not just your house?
What is a unicorn factory?
Oh, that's where we produce all the unicorns. We have this thing where we've given out, like, in every 100th packet of unicorns, there's a ticket, and you can get to tour the factory, but some horrible things might happen to you one by one, or you learn all these moral lessons. So it's really special.
Fantastic. And I'm Jarrod. I write the majority of the music for Sealungs. I do a bit of promotional stuff for Mantravision, and once again, just happy to be here. Happy to work with these two fine people.
Well, great. I am so glad all of you are here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start asking you questions. So first things first, this is for Ant. How many bands does the label have?
I think it's 6 solid bands. And then there's some loose bands that Mantravision does work for, mastering or mix downs or so forth, or collaborations. So yeah, a solid one. So there's Sounds Like Winter, Sequential Zero, Sealungs, Orcus Nullify, Burnt Souls, and there was Eartha Eye, and who else was there? Did I miss anyone?
Def Leppard.
Def Leppard, yeah. And on the outside, I work with Heatwave as well, which is collaboration between myself and John Bechdel from Ministry and Fear Factory.
Andi and Ant, you're both in Sydney, and Jarrod is in Melbourne. How did all of you meet, and how did you end up how is it like collaborating when all three of you are in, well, two of you are in the same city and then Jarrod is in another city?
Go.
Okay, so yeah, back to what Andi said before. We were playing in a show in Melbourne, and the guys from Sounds Like Winter had come down to Melbourne for the show, and I think we spoke for about 15 minutes before the show and about 20 minutes afterwards, and just kind of both liked what everybody was doing. We all kind of got on, and we all liked the same sort of music and could appreciate each other's work. And then, obviously things went quiet with live shows due to the pandemic. So I started writing some music and thought, oh, who would be good to send my music to? And I chose Ant and Andi because I knew that what they were doing was really great, and I knew that Ant was a producer. And just sort of went from there. And it's actually been probably the easiest process of any band I've ever been in, because we're not there to argue with each other, and we're not, there's no.
And also, we work for free.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no egos or creative conflicts or anything like that. I'll send them a song. If they like it, they can work on it. If they don't like it, they choose not to. That's up to them. And I have full trust in what they're doing. So I know that anything that I send to them, I'm going to be happy with what I get back. So once I've sent them the music, I can literally forget about it and just know that somebody's going to do a good job. So I don't have to get involved and say, oh, well, I think you should do this and I think you should do that. And I think that's where most bands, that's where conflict begins, and that's where bands end up breaking up. It's when people who like similar things can't agree on ideas. And luckily we haven't had any of those problems yet. And I imagine if we did start having those problems, I could just turn the computer off and try again tomorrow. So
We do have to put up with Jarrod constantly reminding us that Melbourne is a much more cultured city than Sydney, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm there's nothing I can do about that.
I don't think you even live in Melbourne anymore, do you, Jarrod? Don't you live in the mountains?
I live in the mountains, yeah. So let's see if I can turn my camera around and you might be able to see I'm out in the bush
wow.
at the moment with a nice view over to the mountains. So yeah, not anywhere near the city. So yeah, Melbourne might be more cultured, but I'm out here in the sticks.
Hey, that's still awesome though. But I noticed in Sealungs there's a lot of themes. Well, actually, I noticed this in all in Mantra Vision bands. Each band has a theme, regardless as if it's like a story or and also like the lyrics. Can you guys implement like what how does that how the creative process comes about when creating the songs, and like what are your influences stem from?
I would say that for Sealungs, Jarrod and I are both very interested in history and politics, and the sweep and the movement of various ideologies throughout time and how they've shaped the modern world. And so it's quite natural to write about that kind of stuff. And that sort of pervades with Sounds Like Winter as well. I think a lot of our stuff's quite political without being overtly political. It's kind of veiled in metaphor to a degree, and focuses more on the human element of how those political decisions filter down and affect the man in the street, sort of without beating a drum about it or anything like that. So and then there's also the personal side of it. Like there's some quite sort of introspective lyrics and things like that that Ant primarily does. And so yeah, I guess it's that melding of the personal and the historical and the literary. I find it really interesting. Like I've always liked songwriters that were storytellers. And so to be able to tell a cool story in 3.5 minutes and play with language that way, I think it's really interesting. And that's because I've had free reign with Sealungs, it sort of gets a bit fruity like that. When it Sounds Like Winter is more of a balance between myself and Ant. And I can't speak for Burnt Souls or Sequential Zero, but I know that Ant carries those themes as well, especially the personal element of the political spectrum. I've seen that crop up in the Sequential Zero stuff. So
yeah, the Sequential Zero stuff, you're right. And I think the lean with Sequential Zero seems to be a little bit more about environmental issues and protection of the planet and so forth, and that kind of thing. Whereas in Sounds Like Winter, I do exercise a lot of demons. A lot of them are past demons. It's probably not a good idea to admit that I'm quite a happy person these days and feeling very complete and satisfied and creatively fulfilled. But that wasn't always the case. So I can tap into the past where I have suffered mental health issues and I've had bad breakups and so forth, and that's always a rich vein to tap because I had some pretty dark times. So that makes it easier. And then, as Andi says, having a story to tell really it makes it easier to write a song as well when you think about, okay, what's the story here? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I know, like, when I heard Truffle from Sealungs, if it reminded me of 1984 from George Orwell.
Me too.
And so I as I was listening to it, I did notice it was is the influence from like anti capitalism as well?
Yeah,
sorry, go Jarrod.
I think what we try to do in Sealungs is there's a lot of parallels between things that we can look at in the past and things that are happening right now. And they're obviously happening in different ways, but there's been a lot of focus, especially after the pandemic, on sort of rights going back to the employee rather than the employer, and people are starting to realize that maybe we don't have to work ridiculous hours for very little money, or maybe there's things that are more important than giving up, a certain chunk of your soul to a job. So I guess very literally back in the time that we're talking about with Truffle Pig, there was a chance that you could go to work and not make it home. And it was probably more than a 50-50 chance that you could die at work that day. And
Oh,
obviously that's not something that's happening now, but there is a lot of people that are progressively losing more of themselves to work. And I mean, I've been in that situation before where been on the verge of having a breakdown just to put money in somebody else's pocket. So yeah, I think we like to play on those sorts of themes that, we'll with our song Piss Up a Rope, we're sort of comparing the billionaires now that everybody seems to be obsessed with the billionaires of the past. There was a real fashion, even back. Oh, I'll let Andi take over from here.
Well, I think, yeah, with both those songs, Truffle Pig in particular, we're looking at case studies from the Belle Epoque or the Gilded Age, right? The late 1800s, early 1900s, which also gave birth to the rise of the workers' movement, solidarity movements, even the revolutions in Germany and Russia and whatnot. So there was an awareness that the balance, the work-life balance, and the disparity in of wealth was untenable, and it's rearing its head again now. There's definite parallels of that era, so we can draw upon these examples and gild them lyrically with these historical things in order to make it seem more exotic, but it's still incredibly relevant to today. Piss Up a Rope in particular is more just about how billionaires are cunts, and morally wrong. So it's not particularly layered. I mean, like there's a few turns of phrasing there that could be interpreted one way or another, but it's timely with the whole what they call quiet quitting, which is just work to rule. And just this reevaluation of the equilibrium between the owning class and the working class that fucking produces everything.
wow, I didn't realize that Australia is having the same issues as in America too.
For sure, for sure. It's becoming even more noticeable here because pre-pandemic we did rely so heavily on overseas workers as well, and because we haven't had that, there's been a real shift now. The balance of power is going to the worker, and there's so many jobs available, and people are reassessing what they want to do, because they don't want to be giving that power back to the haves rather than the have-nots. So yeah, we try and sort of focus on all that sort of stuff without being too laser focused on it. I think if we were to write songs about what was happening right now, then we'd end up like a political punk band, and I think it would be I don't know, those things kind of have relevance at a time period, but as soon as you shift on to the next time period, they kind of lose their relevance a little bit. So using historical examples to pinpoint things that are happening now kind of means that in the future, we're not going to be looking back and going, well, that was really relevant for 2022, but it makes no sense now.
Yeah, it shows the perennial nature of these issues, and I think Jarrod's right that we don't want to be too overt about it. That's why, we play with metaphor and things like that, because we don't want to beat people over the head, and primarily what we want to do is tell a story. We don't want to be too polemic about it. Otherwise we'd put on a lecture, but we're not here to do that. We're here to entertain. So, yeah.
That's the thing, and that's what I tell DJs that I work with. They get the younger DJs come through and they go, "I'm going to play this song that I really enjoyed in my lounge room the other day, and that everyone should know about." And I said, "Well, look, you're here to entertain, not educate." And I think that you got to strike that balance.
There is a balance though, because like you lean too far in the other direction and you just end up playing This Corrosion 12 times, and like play it out, man.
I think the bigger picture also is that people are starting to see the threat, the worldwide threat to democracy and the failure of trickle down economics and so forth. So everyone's waking up, they're becoming more politically engaged, and that they've seen the price of stepping back from politics. And you get people like our old PM, and you get people like Trump. That's what happens when you take your eye off the political ball and you don't participate, and you let things just happen to you. So I think it's a sign of I think it's a really good time, actually.
I'm just going to go close my window because there's a guy with a really huge penis revving his motorbike really loud outside. Just hold on a sec.
I'm sorry if this has turned into a political lecture. We can we can get back to music at some point.
Yeah.
No,
I think
it's interesting because I don't know how right now Australia government is, and it's just all like how capitalism, how politics, and just how the pandemic just hit. It's just a ripple effect, and we're all affected by politics and world governments, like just in a global scale.
Well, even everything's so fragile now because everything's so connected, and the situation here in Australia is not as extreme or exacerbated as in the US, because we still have like the vestiges of like social systems to a much greater degree. Laissez-faire capitalism and the free market hasn't been quite so entrenched in our national psyche as it has over there. So we still have healthcare, for example, which is huge. You know what I mean? Like, so we're pretty lucky in that regard. But like, I think we express these notions in the vein of global solidarity, so that like, just because, we might not have it so bad, we don't really want like, oh, I've got mine, Jack, so fuck you. Like, it's a, it's a universal coalition of people.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you use history, because you see that history is always repeating ourselves, and us humans, we just never fucking learn from our mistakes. So
it's interesting though, because like we're obsessed with tradition, right? Mm-hmm. And what is tradition if not the modes and mores and ways of thought of a bunch of dead dudes? Like, it's like we live enmeshed by these systems that were created when nobody alive today was alive, and for a great majority of them, their parameters are no longer relevant, or they're failing, or they fail to address the issues of 2022. And so that mode of repetition and that I think, obviously you have to learn from history, which is difficult to do when there's like such a concerted effort. Again, we go back to what we're hearing about in America to prevent people from reading certain books, or the absolute hoo-ha about critical race theory and things like that. There's a concerted effort to keep people their focus narrowed on the now. So yeah, look, I mean, I just think history is really interesting. Like we read a lot of fiction. But we like dark shit, right? We're goths, or I'm a reformed goth, but whatever. And history's full of amazing stories of like plague and depredation and colonialism and people eating their dogs, and like it's just interesting, like and it's very rich fodder for song lyrics, in a way that transcends. There's only so many songs you can write about how you've got anxiety, or how oh woe is me, she's gone. And then you have this, hundreds of years worth of like humans being extraordinarily shitty to one another to draw upon and spin these cool dark stories.
No, definitely. I definitely agree to that. Absolutely. I enjoy history as well. I've actually been getting more involved into it. So it was definitely interesting and refreshing to see how Sealungs and even Sounds Like Winter, when I was listening to you guys, how you implemented a story. And I feel like a lot of bands do have that lack of story. They directly go to the main message, where instead of just like creating a whole story out of it. So I definitely appreciated that when I listened to the bands and the songs.
I think
There's a time and a place for all kinds, you know what I mean? Like, this is just personally what I like, or, you know, what we like, you know. I think, you know, everyone, it's good that we have variety in you know, in the world of alternative music, and, you know, in the world of music, period. You know, I like a banger with a hot chorus as much as the next guy.
Mm-hmm.
it's I think there's enough music around that sort of sounds the same as the next band, or the, you know, people trying to do what their heroes have done. So we're just trying to do something a little bit different. There's enough love songs in the world, so we're yeah, we're focusing on something else.
Hate songs, join us.
Yeah. We should let Ant talk.
Yeah.
It's been actually really good because working with a really strong lyricist like Andi, it allows us, like you say, we write really good songs. I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna come out and say it. I think our projects, we write really good songs, and that's always the aim for me as a producer. To, you know, they say that our albums sound a little bit like compilations because we look at different themes, different tones, different beats, and whatever for each track is quite different from the next. But the overarching theme, I feel, is strong songwriting, and you know, we don't want filler in any of our releases. We don't, you know, there's no need for it. There's no, and we have that luxury that we don't have to do that. Luckily, I think, yeah, I feel quite lucky to be working with all these guys. Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there anyone else in the like in Mantra Vision productions, or it's just all, a collective of all three of you?
Bruce Nullify from Orcus Nullify, he's third member of Sequential Zero. I work with him quite closely, and he's also quite active with he works hand in hand with Jarrod on it, and does a lot of promo for Mantra Vision as well. And he's our US connection as well, which is good. We're hoping to cash in on that at some stage soon. Ideally, I'd really like to do a Mantra Vision, you know, mini tour of the US. That'd be ideal. But it's just about, you know, pulling everything together from the other side of the world. It's a little difficult.
Speaking about touring, are you planning to tour anytime soon?
We've been on break from live shows because we're writing the new record, so we're about a third of the way, I'd say, through writing the new Sounds Like Winter record, and the songs are coming together pretty easily. And so we're not touring per se, but we have a show come out next week, I believe, and then we are going to be doing two like sort of mini festivals, one in Sydney and one in Melbourne, with Icon and Sealungs and Sounds Like Winter and Body Maintenance, Winter Nationale, Off Pain, bunch of cool bands. Jarrod put together the one in Melbourne. So really looking forward to that. We haven't been down to Melbourne for a couple of years. We were playing so often that we didn't have time to write. So we dropped the album last album in 2020, was it? And
it's been almost exactly a year since it was properly released.
Before that, when you're playing a lot of shows, you're always rehearsing to play shows, going, oh, we should put this song in the set, we should put that song in the set. There's not so much time to write new stuff, so we sort of consciously took a break. But we're looking forward to playing again, and I'm nervous and equally excited about how Sealungs is going to turn out, because we're going to have like one rehearsal beforehand. So it could be glorious or it could be really fucked, but like either way, it's going to be interesting.
And we're looking ahead to 2023, and if we can swing things as far as visas and so forth, and actually pull together a 2-week timeline of shows, we've all agreed we really do need to get over to the US sooner rather than later and try and do that. So
I want to try some of that high fructose corn syrup. So
we don't have that here. We have cane sugar.
So really?
Yeah. The high fructose corn syrup actually it helps contribute towards type 2 diabetes about twice the amount, by the way.
Oh, I know. Trust. It's the sugar here is horrible. Sometimes I tend to go to Mexico a lot, and just things taste so much better over there than here. Just
Why? And we're trying to get sponsored by Pepsi for the tour. Just
okay, shh.
So I was gonna go ahead and ask, how's the Gothic subculture in Australia?
Yeah, I DJ in the scene. It's actually quite healthy, and I think the pandemic kind of kicked it back into life. That plus also the sudden profusion of Gothic models on Instagram. So we 2019, no one wanted to go out at all. We would get 40 people to a club, and now that's the very same club we run in a warehouse, and we're selling out. We've just sold out our fourth one, and it's coming next month. So that it's 450 people every couple of months. That's pretty healthy. And then there's smaller clubs. There's that runs in Sydney, a smaller club.
Transcendence.
Yeah, thanks. It gets 60 to 80 people. It's quite a small venue, but it runs once a month or so, and it's really, really healthy. The scene, yeah, it's quite, it's a healthy scene. And the Melbourne scene, Melbourne's more of an indoors kind of place. The weather's not as sunny as it is here. We have a number of really great beaches on our doorsteps in Sydney. So the beach culture is bigger here, whereas Melbourne is more of a
Just don't go to the beach.
Yeah, that's right. So there's more goths in Melbourne than there are in Sydney, possibly. But there's definitely more clubs and so forth, but not by a real lot. There used to be a bigger difference between the scenes in Sydney and Melbourne, but I think the Sydney scene is quite healthy and has rebounded quite nicely.
In terms of clubs, I mean, it's always been dominated by that. Like, there was quite a proliferation of bands here in the 90s, but like in terms of live music, it's more of a punk rock thing than it is a Gothic thing. Punk rock, post-punk, or just various offshoots and variations on that. There's not really any dyed-in-the-wool Gothic with the capital G bands playing around at the moment.
No. This sounds like Winter's the most Gothic band currently playing in Australia, as far as I can tell. And and we kind of we don't universally nod in that direction, but. That said, though, it is the scene that has embraced us to the largest extent. And as a producer, that is my bent, and I do color things in that way. Anyway, guilty as charged. there are bats in my belfry. But that's it's interesting. Yeah, there aren't more bands, but I guess. The goth scene is a club culture to a large extent here, and always has been.
Gigs make you sweaty, and then your hair goes down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you make up ones, Yeah, that's it. And because it's warmer here, Gothic clothing's quite heavy and thick, and you don't want to really, you don't want to be in a hot environment. You want to,
I think Melbourne, especially, I can't comment on the club scene because I don't roll in those circles. But in terms of the live music scene, it tends to be more sort of split down the middle of either indie rock or heavy rock, like metal and stoner and doom and all that sort of stuff. So there might be a bit of room for goth music in Melbourne, but it's predominantly, the space is taken up by indie rock and the heavier bands. So I think we're kind of leaning more towards the, at least in Melbourne, towards the heavier rock kind of crowd. There's enough elements of that in Sealungs, and it's just a super friendly crowd as well. Like,
They're
you go to
more receptive to music live as well. Like they'll they're more responsive, let's say.
Yeah, in Melbourne too, within the scene, there's a lot of people who, you'll go to a show and you'll see the same people that you saw at another show last weekend, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not people turning up and it's just the same people every weekend. It's just the people who do go are committed to it, and they'll go from show to show, and you know, it's a very tight knit group. So once you can kind of get your foot in the door there in Melbourne, it's a good place to be. So I don't know about so much about the live rock scene up in Sydney, but in Melbourne, it's
Oh, there's like gigs every night in Sydney. But again, it's just, you know, like within the very, very small parameters of what we might label as Gothic rock, there's just not a lot. And that's the thing. It's like, I mean, the scene itself and musically, it is a very backward looking scene. You know what I mean? We're all still listening to the bands from 1982. We kind of sound like the bands from 1982. That was like this very golden period when, like, you know, these experimental and artistic influences were filtering into punk rock. And so that's the side of it that I've always personally drawn from, the offshoots of punk rock, the post-punk end of it, rather than the sort of the caricature that it almost became afterwards. So I think part of the reason there's not that many bands is because we, as a subculture, we look backwards so fixedly. You know, it's interesting, like, you know, I think there was just something in the air or in the water at the time, and it's been locked in amber ever since. You know, most, you know, I mean, rock and roll as a genre has been around for about 70 years now. And so everything's kind of been done to a degree. And so, you know,
see, I got to step in and disagree here that we're the Gothic scene worldwide is hitting a purple patch. And with the advent of dark wave, and you know, I think the scene itself is less focused on rock than it used to be to a large extent. There's still a very strong vein of that Gothic rock, sunglasses and hat, the big cowboy hats.
Electronic based, and I hear a lot of cold wave and dark wave elements to it.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about Subsequential Zero and how many albums you have, and just any projects that you're looking forward to in the future for Subsequential Zero?
Yeah, so that's a Sequential Zero.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. A lot of people say that. We're still a fairly new, we're a new project because I was producing for Orcus Nullify. We worked really well together, and I was producing for Burnt Souls as well. I did their first album. Colin from that band, we worked together really well. So we decided to form like a group together, and also because Sounds Like Winter's so guitar driven, I really needed to get my synthesizers and drum machines back into the mix. I had an 80s new wave band called Lunar Module for probably 12 years or so, and I kind of miss all that stuff because that's what I do. Well, I enjoy doing it. So that's why it's all electronic. Yeah, Bruce plays a lot of guitar, but yeah, generally it's all electronic.
And what other are you going to tour anytime soon with Sequential Zero?
The plan is to I'm going to be in the US in 2023 once or twice. There's no doubt about that. And whether it's touring Sounds Like Winter or whether it's touring Sequential Zero or both, that's what will be happening. It's just a matter of tying together enough cities and venues together to make it happen. Excuse me. With Sequential Zero, we've released 4 2-track singles. We're going to release a 5th one, and then we're going to put it all together on an album. And that album will also have remixes on, and then we'll actually release it physically and on CD and probably vinyl as well. Excuse me, I've got that. There's a second virus going around as well as COVID.
Oh no!
Yeah, RSV, which is like a chest infection thing, and it's going right through Australia. So I've had
no!
And monkey.
You have monkeypox over there?
Yeah, we have monkeypox here. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's just I think it's the price we're paying for having such a small world. It's so easy to travel now, the seamless borders, and you know, and people are socially fluid as well. and it had to happen. It had to happen. These pandemics had to happen. It's just, it's cause and effect. There's no conspiracy there.
Oh no, definitely. I mean, it's more people, more viruses that are born. So sucks. But...
Yeah. And as Andy mentioned, with Sounds Like Winter, our third album is a year old now, and we're actively trying to write for the fourth album, and we're a third of the way there. We're actually doing a show in about 2 weeks, specifically just to try out some of the new songs, and they're pretty exciting. There's a really, really great death rock track that Andy's come up with called Planets. He's going to sing it. I'm actually playing guitar. I play guitar on only like 3 songs, but I'm really excited about that one in particular. So things are really good actually.
And I believe you mentioned that was it Sealungs that's also going to be touring as well in next month for Sydney and Melbourne,
Sydney and Melbourne. Yeah, that's right. So a big show in both cities. So we've been actually rehearsing because our drummer Letitia is going to step in and play the live drums for Sealungs. So we've been rehearsing Sealungs here in Sydney without Jarrod, using the stems from the recordings. And then when we meet up in Melbourne in October, we're going to have spend a whole day in the rehearsal studio and actually get our shit together before the show the night after. But I think we'll pull it off, and it's really exciting. Those songs have a real presence live. It blew me away actually. I was in the rehearsal space. I was spinning out how great it was. Those songs are quite powerful.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but did Sounds Like Winter open up for Bauhaus?
Yeah. Yeah. It was Peter Murphy and David J. Yeah. They're celebrating 40 years of Bauhaus. Yeah, in 2016 we opened for them. That was exciting. It was really exciting. Yeah. It was we've opened for a few good bands. We've opened for the Chameleons. Who else? Peter Murphy and my old memory's no good, but the good supports come through. We try to grab them. We've opened for Pop Will Eat Itself as well. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Getting an international support like that, it seems really exciting, but really no one remembers that you played. It's nice to be on the poster. But it's good to say that you've done it.
No, absolutely. I mean, did you, by any chance, did you end up meeting Peter Murphy and David J, or?
Yeah, they're really great guys. Yeah, because we shared a backstage space, and yeah. No, it was good. He's a crazy guy.
Wow. Yeah, I ended up seeing Bauhaus this year in World, and I mean, first off, amazing. It's an amazing show, but
they've still got it. They've still got it.
Oh, hell yeah. Like, however, I did feel bad though, because Peter Murphy ended up falling down in one of the songs. I believe it was Siggy Stardust when he was playing. So I felt it sucked to see that. But yeah, it was, other than that, amazing.
Yeah, he is. The promoter told everybody on the tour, don't let Peter have any cocaine. And because he's been here a couple of times, and one time he did manage to get some, and he got up on stage and he was doing a solo show, and all he did was tell stories about himself and hardly play any songs.
Oh my god.
Regaling the crowd on how one of the air hostesses on the plane found him so attractive, and someone forgot to tell the driver, his driver, don't, whatever you do, let him take you to go to find a dealer.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh Peter. We still love you though.
Yeah, that's right. He's the king.
Definitely. Um, but let's see. I think that's all my questions.
Yep. Okay.
And but I first off I want to thank you for having this interview with me. Like I told you, I'm gonna go ahead and upload the video next month, okay?
Yep. No worries. Okay, yeah, let's send us all links. We'll share it far and wide.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Appreciate it, and yeah, your enthusiasm. Great interview. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Thank you. And again, like there were some songs that I really enjoyed of listening. Sounds on like winter. I'm not gonna add this by the way, but since this part of the interview, but
Yeah.
there's some songs that really hit the nail in the coffin for me. So I immediately heard the element like in themes of mental health and how important mental health is in Sounds Like Winter. I believe it was your last album. Let's see. Fight the Stairs. So
Yeah. That's a great track. It's so, and the one of the things I really enjoy about it is Andi and I both get to sing on that track, and our voices are quite complementary. So yeah, that's a great track. Yeah, thanks very much. My favorite, I think, is The Wedding Feast. That's my favorite one. But yeah, and Send the Boy. There's a couple of favorites on there. It's exciting to stand back after a record is finished and just appreciate it, and you feel like you kind of channeled it, came through you. You didn't really create it, It's an interesting feeling. I think that's why musicians feel like imposters a lot of the time. They have imposter syndrome, or it's universal, because once you've finished and you've created the song, you always say to yourself, how the hell did I do that? Where did it come from? So yeah, it's exciting. Thanks very much.
no, definitely, and you're welcome. But again, thank you for coming out. I appreciate you, and I will keep you updated on the emails. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, and hopefully we can get over your way sooner rather than later.
Oh, as soon as you guys notify me, I'll be there and go support you guys. So when you guys come down here. So
That's awesome. Okay.
all right, and it was nice talking to you, and I will keep you updated, okay?
Hey, have a good evening.
All right, you as well.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.